meeting, call the meeting to order. Minutes from the last meeting. Have a motion to approve. All of it be approved. Second. Second. Comments?
Second, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me at all?
I can hear you now, but before we couldn't hear you make them ask for the motion.
Oh.
I hear you laughing.
Any comments? None? All in favor, approving the minutes? Aye.
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 Approved. Correspondence. First selectman sent out an email stating that masks are no longer required at town meetings. And there is no requirement here either, but it's preferential whether you want to or not. Stacy Haskell sent an email stating that the town attorney said the new version of the Flood Prevention Climate Resilience Erosion Control Board had to abide by the old ordinance with regards to the number of board members. So that the old ordinance says there's 5. So that's what they're starting with. And we'll talk more about that down in item 5. First selectman sent an email on legal guidance from the town attorney stating that unless the state legislature extends the temporary provision in the FOI that allowed virtual hybrid meetings, the April meeting will be our last one that we can do virtually or hybrid. Everything after that will be in person. And the state legislature hasn't extended it yet, and I doubt whether they will.
We're gonna be meeting here?
Yep. Until we get thrown out.
We get thrown out.
Unless you want to move back to 7 PM meeting.
This is just like that.
I like my commute as well.
Well, we don't have a space either, so that's the other problem.
When you ask us to kick in for rent, I had to check something.
And then item D, Pam McDonald forwarded an email asking me to forward the link to you on video, just the background on how the power grid works. Thought it might be interesting. As far as tasking updates, zoning regulations, they're in the process of hiring a consultant, or they did hire a consultant.
Yeah, so that's, they're in the process of like finalizing the contract, but I have been told that there's gonna be workshops, monthly workshops with the consultant and planning and zoning, and they're all gonna be open meetings with public input. So the entire zoning regulation rewrite is gonna be completely transparent with lots of opportunity, but it's a 2-step process. So the first step is to simplify all, our current zoning regulations and because there's been so many addendums and changes and tweaks to the current regulations. So they're going to like compile all of that. So it's very easy to see what can be done in each zone, what's required for each zone. And then changing those regulations is the next step. So.
In regards to that, there was a meeting of the Long Island Sound Study, which has representatives from both municipalities, nonprofits, and universities on both sides of Long Island. And I mentioned that in the past, one of the things that was requested were like examples of regulations. And I was forwarded by one of the participants, Paul Stacy. He is with Footprints in the Water. He had given us some people that we might want to talk to who might have examples of those zoning regulations. So if that's at all interesting, I can include that link in the meeting minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Community outreach, Susan?
Yes, on that note, since as of about noon today, we have 4 additional topics that have been written up. Those of you who have signed up, those of you who have signed, oh, I see you're changing the focus. Okay, those of you who have signed up, that's great. And I hope you can get me your topics by the end of the month. There's still only 4 more. Yeah, me, and then there should be lawns down at the bottom.
I
Okay.
added plastics.
Oh, you added plastics. Okay, excellent. Okay, so what I will be doing is I'm going to take these and I'm going to go through them and make sure all the links, for those of you who have put links in your do you know topics, I will check that the links are in fact working, and then I will forward them to Danielle. Just, I think, to be alert that to check if you've used a topic with links, that you periodically check that your links are still working. I'm going to try and check too, because Danielle may not use that particular one right away, and in 3 months, is the link still active? You know how that goes. So anyway, keep them coming, and I think we're in good shape, because now we're like 4 or 5 months ahead, so that's good.
Okay, my only comment, a couple of those were a little longer than what typically is in there, so you might want to ask Danielle if the length matters. I mean, it's not getting printed or anything, so I don't see why the length would matter. But she might want to condense some of those down.
I will ask her.
Pace. Julia, was there going to be anything more on this, or is this
Yes,
kind of on hold?
there are 2 things. One has to do with solar energy. And that was something where we were kind of working with, PACE had suggested that I get a hold of Sustainable Connecticut, who recommended a group called Great Plains. I don't know if I had a chance to talk about it at the last meeting, but they're out in the Midwest. And they do analysis of whether your solar regulations are progressive or where they might be changed to encourage more use of solar energy. And something they do for free. And it's, I think, a very good program. Even though someone is hired kind of look into this for Stonington, this would be is a good check, and probably will come in with a result much faster than the consultants. So I had waited because I had asked Danielle some time ago about it, and she had been, enthusiastic, but I hadn't really heard back. And then I didn't want to be a pest. I called our wonderful June, and I said, June, what do you think? Diplomatically, she said, well, go ahead. I'll try again. So, and June, didn't you send a little message to her too, or did you?
Did not.
You did
No,
not.
because you sent an email to her right away. So
I did, and she responded right away, and she said she was
Yeah.
sorry. And I told her in my email that I knew the budget process had been kind of grueling. And what she said was she had sent the commitment letter to Sustainable Connecticut and to Great Plains. So you have to have a commitment letter saying that your town is willing to have this analysis done. And since it's free and there doesn't seem to be an enormous amount of work for anyone, it's a good way for us to take a look at what we have and see if there's any way we can improve our solar requirements. And the other thing was Heat Smart. There's the program Heat Smart Light. I think I talked about it last time, right? Did I? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. So Heat Smart Light is something that I think would be very good to go forward with, because once again, it's a community information thing, which is one of the things we've taken on. And just today, then Danielle wrote back and said she was interested again in getting together with Bernie Pelletier of PACE. And so I wrote to him and told him that she was, and asked if I could give her his phone number, her phone number, and his phone number and email address. And she said, I think he's going to say just absolutely fine. So we'll get that going too. And I'll let you know next month what happens, because I think it would be a very good thing. It's a monthly bulletin, kind of a short bulletin that's sent out with ways that people can improve their use of energy, which I think is a very important thing and will fit in nicely actually with what Susan is doing. Is it's a kind of monthly thing, bringing people up to date on what they can do to help cut CO2 emissions. So that's where those things stand with PACE. Correct, that's it.
Okay. Regarding the first item, there was a similar program called Soul Smart. I suggested to the Planning and Zoning Commission during one of their hearings, when they were doing the revision for the solar regulations, that they look into it, and they said they weren't interested in doing that at the time. So if this new other program doesn't need to go through our planning and zoning directly, we might have better luck.
No, it does not.
Would it be possible for the board to, the task force to request that they do the analysis and we provide them with the regulations? So
For Soul Smart, so Danielle sent a letter and Julie, I think you were copied in on this, but she sent a commitment letter to them, and we got a response back that says, okay, all right. Hello, Danielle. Thank you for your interest in Soul Smart support by way of this email. I'm happy to connect you with David and Teresa of the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. They will be providing support to you in Stonington. Thank you again. This is from Jessica Leclerc. So she sent in the commitment letter, and so we're in the program.
Okay, so it's the same program.
Yeah.
She really
Same
mentioned a different name when she was talking.
Well, it's slightly different channel that you go through, but they're connected.
Yeah.
And even by using the Great Plains one, you can still get Sustainable Connecticut credits for doing it. They're kind of linked together.
Okay.
All right. Sharon's not here. I don't know if she did anything more with the Economic Development Commission interest in EV charging stations. There's that may have to wait a few months or so, whatever, because there's a lot going on at the state level regarding EV charging stations. But none of it's defined yet in any of the regulations. So, but there's some of it is defined in that the power companies are offering credits and incentives for businesses and private residential homeowners. And I think we discussed that last week or last month. And there was a link to the website that the EV Car Club of America of Connecticut had, that had links to all the information on it. So let's see where that goes. Item 5A, Flood and Erosion Control Board, Board of Selectmen, voted to establish it. Great, thank you for that. And they'll incorporate stormwater. They said stormwater duties. I'm not sure if they actually going to create a stormwater authority like New London did, or whether they're just doing what our stormwater task force did in the past. But it's up to the new board and the Board of Selectmen how they want to handle that.
We already have 2 applicants.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
And the applications are open till the end of April. So if you know anyone that you think would be good for it, you might want to suggest that they submit an application.
I know at least one person who wanted to submit an application.
Okay. Our suggestion that we create a new position for a climate sustainability and floodplain manager. That is still in the budget. So that's a big plus. And we'll see whether it makes it through the budget process. The next item, the budget's been cut and finalized, and the public hearing is March 29th. And then if they don't make any more adjustments to the budget from there, then it goes to town referendum in April, town meeting, and then town referendum. So this is a big key for us, and if it goes through, it will be a big win. But that person will be key, I think, to how the town moves forward with climate resilience.
And anybody can come and speak. So
Yes.
when they go through the budget, they'll go through the budget, Board of Finance will go through the budget each section. And then, ask if there's anybody who wants to speak on a particular line item. And that's when you get up to speak. People can speak either in favor of or, against. So the more people that speak in favor of is really important.
Lindsay had asked John and me to write letters, and we both did. And did you write to everybody and ask them to?
What's that?
No, I didn't.
No. Well, we did, right, to write letters. Lindsay, maybe you could send that out more widely, because I think it's a very good idea.
No, I just got mad one night and sent it to a few friends.
Well-
But yeah, I know the Board of Finance has received, some letters, like 8-10 letters, which is really helpful. And then also showing up and making comments at public comment is helpful too. Supporting
Do you
everything.
want more letters just from the general public?
I don't know. I'm not on the Board of Finance, but I think it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Makes a difference. I mean, the more positive support for anything new. I mean, this is a new position. In the budget that passed the first round of deliberation, and I say first round of deliberations because after the public hearing, there's a final deliberation before it goes to referendum. So there's 3 new positions. There were 4 new positions asked for, and 3.5 of them are in the budget. When I say 3.5, one position is starting in January of 2023. So that's pretty remarkable. That's the first thing that they usually cut is new staff. So all positions are in there, but there were very strong justifications for all of them. So just, hammering home like why it's so important, all of that helps. So anybody that hasn't already written a letter that could, it doesn't go unnoticed, that's for sure.
What are the other positions?
So for an assistant engineer, and that position is really going to focus on, it's going to assist the town engineer. He's going to assist that, but stormwater, floodplain manager duties as well. And another position in the assessor's office. The assessor's office hasn't had an increase in staff in 20 years. And they miss some deadlines with assessing properties, which impacts our tax revenue. So the assessor's office, and then the other position is in
Human services.
in human services.
That's a half position.
Nope, the half position is in the police department.
Oh.
So the one for human services is more for, mental health issues, because the woman that was hired last year has an average of 40 to 50 cases per month that she's assisting with. So it's just like there's an incredible need, so that's what that position is for. So no, in the police department, due to the police accountability bill, which went into effect, what was voted on in 2020, late 2020, or it was, yeah, it was voted on in 2020 in Hartford and passed. But I think parts of it now go into effect. There were different things that the town, take 1 to 2 years for different parts of it. So there's a position in the police department. There's an incredible amount of accreditation that's required, record keeping. There's going to be body cams now, and dash cams and all of that. So there's a person that's required. It's going to take a full-time job so they can either take a patrolman off the road, right? Which you don't want to do because we need our officers on the road, or you add another position. So they said that they could move that position to start January 1 instead of July 1. So that's why that position's, the budget amount for that position was cut in half for starting it in January 1.
June, is there any chance to take all 4?
That they would take them out?
No, that they would allow all 4 to be hired.
Oh yeah, they're in the budget now. So they passed the deliberations. What I'm saying is that it's remarkable that they weren't cut.
Oh, good, okay.
All right, so in the past, like the Department of Public Works has asked for 1 hire, right? And it was always cut. And this was just, somebody to help with maintaining our roads and mowing and everything else in our fields. And I mean, that's the first thing historically that the Board of Finance has cut before deliberations even start. And none of the positions were. So, which is really good, but there's a lot of support and justification for all of these positions. There's a lot of data supporting them. So that's why I'm saying, back to would additional letters help? Absolutely. They are a good position for it to stay in the budget. We want it to stay in the budget. So any more letters of support or commentary at the public hearing will definitely be beneficial.
Yeah, there were commissioners that did mention that they received a number of letters, and they also mentioned that they were appreciative of the PowerPoint that we put together, justifying, showing how other towns around the country, pretty much all of them, the position paid for itself. So that was good. And something that's helping, in my opinion, is helping is that the ARPA funding, if we didn't have the ARPA funding, there would have been a lot more severe cuts, I believe. Because, that's what, $5 million that they're.
$5.2 million.
Yeah. And when they go through the budget, they're cutting, dollar here, dollar there, and just trying to save money.
Yeah, so I'd say if we can all write letters and make comments and also find a couple friends
Yeah.
to do it too. And thanks, Julia, for sending one. My late night ranting.
Lindsay, if you send everybody the names and addresses, that would help. The names
Sure.
and email addresses, I think that makes it easier for people to write letters.
Sure, can do.
You can just send it to Jim Sullivan, because Jim Sullivan is the Director of Finance, and he distributes all of the communication to the Board of Finance members.
Gotcha. Yeah, his email address is kind of hard to find, but I'll put it in the chat here as soon as I grab it.
I'll include it in the minute notes. The meeting minutes.
All right.
The meeting is on the 29th.
Yeah, at the
Yes.
school, in the auditorium, at the high school.
We'll go through the entire budget by then.
Yes. I mean, many parts, there won't be anybody, I mean, they'll just basically go through. Does anybody want to say anything about, page 1, page 2, page 3, and they'll go through it like that, so.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on how many people show up. If it's a small turnout, they might just ask people to speak on what they want to speak on and be done with it. But
And this new position is in the planning department's budget.
Not engineering.
No, Department of Planning. The new engineer is in Department of Public Works under Town Engineer. And then the human services position is under human services. So the one for the sustainability manager is in the planning department.
The revised budget is on the finance department website. You can click on it and download it and look at it, see where they made all the cuts and all the commentary that's out there. Employee handbook, is there any more that they've done on that or not?
No,
No? Okay,
Patty has been looking at it, but not yet.
okay. Wood Pawcatuck, anything to report on that, Dennis?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Solar field at the transfer station, I believe that's on hold for a number of months till they can try and find a new contractor.
Yeah, so it's definitely a great opportunity in a perfect location. There was a little bit of a bait and switch on the one that approached the town. And it could have caused the town to be liable for millions of dollars if something were to happen to if the solar field had to be shut down for repairs to the landfill or anything like that. The town was on the hook for all of that. So they stopped everything, like came to a screeching halt with that particular contractor. And so they're looking at others right now.
Okay. Climate action plan, I believe that's probably on hold until it's decided whether this new position gets hired. And then that person would probably take the lead on that. I updated our priority list that we had. We got quite a lot done, and either that or things didn't happen at the state level that would make things happen. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on any of the items or suggestions on what we do going forward. I mean, do we want to make a new priority list and rank it? And I mean, there were probably another 80 things in here that we had that we could just send that out and rank them. And
Absolutely. Look how good we were. We got all these done.
Right?
Look at the list. We'll learn from all.
Well, we got to bring a couple of them over the finish line. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to where we were when we first looked at this, well on our way.
It's really good.
And there are climate bills before the legislature, state legislature, and the same thing with them. You can comment on any of those if you go to the state website and look for the various climate bills and when the public hearings are. It's really easy to send in testimony to each committee. Some are under the Environment Committee, some are under the Transportation Committee, some are under the Energy Committee. But there is a list of all the bills that are pending. So that would be helpful if you want to, especially the three that I have noted there on item 7. Those are the governor's bills. They tend to get more recognition than ones that are proposed by individual representatives. So I'll take the action to make the new list of candidates for this. Grant opportunities. There's a lot of grants coming down the pike. And there's a lot coming just to Long Island Sound. So because we're a coastal town, we should be applying for these grants. Long Island Sound's Futures Fund grants, they've increased some of the award amounts and they've decreased some of the cost share that's required. So they're making it easier. It's like they have money, then they're just begging people to apply for these grants. Not sure about the EPA one. I didn't find a lot of details on that yet, but that's I think it's 106 million over 5 or 6 years that they're putting out for infrastructure for Long Island Sound.
I can tell you I was on a call where they were talking about Long Island Sound Future Fund, but also all of the funding that's coming into Long Island Sound, not just through this. And there really is a push for support from municipalities and getting people to understand the work that needs to get done, both with like septic and sewer and nitrogen, but a lot of infrastructure. So definitely within the next, maybe not this year, but as more and more money is coming in, there will be more support for towns at the town level to make the changes that they need and to put people in contact with each other. So I'll keep kind of listening to when they're expecting those funds to come out, and who will be managing those. So that was another big thing that came up with the Long Island Sound Future Fund and the increase. They were already at maximum capacity for being able to manage all of the grant funds, and now that they're going to be even bigger. So who really will be the next person who will be taking on the multi-million dollars that are going to be coming in just for infrastructure over the next few years? I was happy to see that it was support for municipalities and not just necessarily individual projects and nonprofits.
Does that mean we have to be ready with a plan in order to apply?
Yeah, so the Long Island Sound Future Fund for this year, what they are doing that is different is they are not going to be funding anybody who is going to go from plan to implementation in 1 year, because they know that that's not feasible. So they're actually planning on funding a fair amount of planning grants or planning process. So even if we identify what those projects are, and we need that plan, that's kind of what they're looking at is stage one. And some of these are over $1 million. Stage one is like just the planning, and then knowing that you might come back in a year or two for implementation.
I heard the term that shovel ready isn't required, but shovel worthy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, so it's definitely ones that have been thought out and ones that will have a high impact, especially with their priorities. And restoration is a big priority. So I know that the town was looking at kind of soft infrastructure versus hard infrastructure when it comes to like seawalls and so on. So those kind of things that will help to restore, protect any sort of habitat restoration is going to be really high on the list.
The town wants to replace the Noyes Avenue and the Home Street seawalls.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of foolish to replace seawalls because it's going to fall apart again. And if they spend a little bit more time and made that into a natural shoreline project with some, gray hardscape instead of real hardscape, that's the type of things that these people pay for. And they just need to get the people that are, saying, well, we need to replace the seawalls to look at these projects, look at the programs and see what they're doing. It's a lot of money that we're not going after yet.
I think we applied to to the Long Island Sound Futures Fund for a grant, but I can't recall what the specifics are.
I know Danielle put in her notes that she and the Seaport applied for a brick FEMA grant for the park.
Okay.
But when I looked at that, they said it was rejected because it didn't qualify on their website. I don't know whether that was the same one that Danielle was referring to,
Okay, I don't know.
but I don't recall Stonington as a town applying for Long Island Sound Futures Fund.
Okay.
And another thing is, a lot, I hear that, we don't have a grant writer,
Well, that's,
but a lot of these nonprofits will take the lead and apply on, like, Eastern Connecticut Conservation District. You know, they won a grant this year, and one of it is build a rain garden somewhere here in Stonington, in 4 other towns. So where that's going, I don't know, but Sea Grant, Save the Sound, those are all people that would be interested, might be interested in helping in town, and they have people that know how to fill out these grants pretty easily.
And I know that these are due in May, like the Long Island Sound Future Fund, so it might, you know, that might be a short time frame to pull it all together. You brought it up last year, at our last meeting, is that Groton recently got one. And they got one to do what we did, which was a assessment of how climate change is going to impact the Groton side of Mystic. So I think some things that would be really competitive in the future is to see what comes back. It's going to be the same stuff that they said about the Mystic, the Stonington side of Mystic, and how the 2 towns can work together to really kind of look at the downtown Mystic area. I do think that that there's some nice plans for collaboration based on what they've already funded. Maybe not this year, but looking at next year.
Related to that, item 7D, Circa is expanding their resilience program statewide. And they did hire a person for the eastern part of the state. And supposedly they're going to work with the Council of Governments. So when Danielle and Jeff Callahan go to the Council of Governments meeting, you know, they could suggest something, what can we do to work with Groton? Because, Mystic is probably the #1 problem that we have in Stonington as far as what's going to flood first.
So our extension, our Eastern Side extension, her name is Alicia Tyson. And so I currently owe her an email, but what she's trying to do right now is just get to know the individual communities and what they think is important for sustainability and climate resilience. So I will respond to her from the side of the aquarium because that's how she knows me, but I feel like she would definitely be someone who might be interested in coming to a meeting and understanding as well some of those priorities, and then she goes back and looks at that regional connections. So she is based out of the Yukon Haven Point office, so she's not too far away.
And then I also heard, I listened to your selectmen's meeting, Deb Downey was saying that they weren't sure where money could come from for sewer water pollution control activities. Did I hear that right? I was on a nature-based webinar, and they mentioned that the state revolving fund is getting a ton of money, as well as all these other things are. And my understanding, they were focusing on conservation aspects of it, but in Connecticut, the money that goes into the state revolving fund can only be used for water pollution control activities. So there could be a ton of money going into there. So they might want to contact our state person that's in charge of that revolving fund to see what's going on and whether there's any money coming in.
She attended a webinar about all of the infrastructure monies that are coming into Connecticut and the different buckets and the timeframes to apply.
Okay.
So,
Hopefully they discuss that one.
yeah, because we need new sewer plants.
Planned.
Plant, yes, singular, agreed.
Where is that sort of envisioned? Is that in Pocketuck area or is it in Mystic?
A single sewer plant,
Oh, a single sewer plant to replace the three.
The three.
The three that are there
Yes.
now.
right.
You don't know where it's going to be.
There was a proposal over 10 years ago. There's land behind the high school. I think that's where it was proposed. So. And they did all the studies and the capacity and everything else, but that's as far as it got.
I'd like to see them do a natural one build a marsh, since Barner Island's gonna go underwater, they could build up a new marsh and have it go through there. And
Natural filtration.
there's a plant, lots of them around the country that are doing that, and it's the cheapest way out, but, and it's also, makes another nature habitat. Bird watchers love it and all that kind of stuff, but whether the town, whether the Water Pollution Control Authority thinks that's a good idea, I don't know. 7A, budget. We talked about the position in the budget. The climate adaptation line that we proposed at $500,000 got cut to $250 by the Board of Selectmen and got cut down to $20,000 by the Board of Finance. So there's 20 grand for that. The EV charging stations, we proposed $30,000. That got cut down to $1.
Oh, no.
The reason they have they keep $1 in there is that doesn't fill the project. But it doesn't do anything as far as funding.
Well, we
And
were hoping for that, and maybe this would be good commentary for the public hearing, was 2 places we thought we could put in charging stations. One is at Town Hall, where the back part of it, there's a whole drainage thing that's going to be fixed by the Town Hall parking lot, that we could at least put the infrastructure in for it, because that's all going to get torn up and resurfaced. And at the 4th District Voting Hall, which there's a major drainage project going in there right now, that we could put the infrastructure for the charging stations in before it's resurfaced. So things don't have to get dug up again. So we were at least hoping for like the base. And one of the questions that came up was, does the electric service at the 4th district, is there enough electricity coming into the 4th District Voting Hall to even support a charging station there? So I think there's some positive, I think there's some indication that they'll fund half of it for, like, at least putting the base in. I don't know about the full charging stations. So
There was also a comment about wanting them to be, where people would have to pay for the privilege of using them. And I was racking my brain at the time during the meeting. I thought we'd had a conversation, someone had brought up some information about the actual cost of the electricity being pretty negligible in places where it had been done before. And I was wondering if anybody remembered that, has actual numbers on that.
So there was a fair amount of confusion by bringing into the conversation what Groton has done, right? So Groton got a grant to put in, I think, 5 charging stations, but the stipulation of the grant was that they had to not charge anybody for a period of so many years. And then after that, they could charge people. So the analysis at that time, I don't know if it's true now because there's more demand, right? The analysis at that time is what they had to pay for the credit card usage was about the same as what they were getting in the electricity consumption, right? So it's kind of something that was a little bit ahead of its time. But so now I think there's a great amount, there will be much more support if we say, we're charging people to use these, because that was the idea all along. It's not free, somebody has to pay for it. So there's absolutely no support for having every taxpayer pay for the electricity consumption of the few that may have an electric car. So that's where that came in. So it's unfortunate that the whole thing from Groton got confused in the whole picture, but.
Yeah, that conversation was a little confusing, and I was trying to remember what you had said about it before. Thank you.
So Groton owns and operates the station?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Town Hall, Public Library, Washington Park.
Grocery
Um,
stores,
Pardon?
the grocery stores, the new grocery stores are putting them in. They put one into a big Y already, and they're planning to put them into another one, not to ours, but to the next, I guess the next big Y that's built.
But that's not the town, of Groton paying for that.
No, it's not town of Groton. That's how we might get another town. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Well,
You might
Tesla's putting three in across the street.
I'm putting another couple outside of his store.
Are they gonna work better than the one that they had?
They updated those,
Oh.
so those work, and then they look to reroute the electricity, so we put in a couple more right out there as well. And it's another one of those partnerships where it's a benefit greatly just for having them here.
There's an operator that operates it, maintains it, and
Yeah, we have,
runs the
Yeah.
charging system.
yeah, we have a couple down there, over at the main building, so, but they're gonna be putting a couple more here as well.
I guess my question keeps on coming is what's the public part of the public-private enterprises here? Because it seems like, it's a business that people are getting into. It's obviously a growing business, but at the same time, if there is a buck to be made out of it, somebody is going to be making a buck off of it. And I don't know that free charging stations would really be doing that much good for anybody, except folks that have some fairly expensive electric cars.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of different models out there. Some people, I mean, I know some businesses have put in free ones because it attracts people to the business. Wineries have done that, and, they aren't there that long and they sell more wine than, they use electricity. There are others that, if you put in solar panels, the electricity, solar panels with batteries, battery backup, electricity could become, negligible. So, there's different ways to approach it. It's all about how they want to design it, but,
I think that's how PACE does it.
I'm sorry. You were saying?
That's how PACE, I think, does it with the solar panels. It's not my recollection.
Because I've seen some numbers bandied about the cost of developing a station. We're talking about a couple $100,000, aren't we?
No.
For a charging station, they're about $15,000.
yeah. Essex put in one, it was like 13 grand that they only put in a single one. It was through a sustainable CT fundraising type thing where they raised half the money through that. And it was like $13,000, I think, that they raised for that project. It all depends on, there's different level
Right.
chargers. If you put in a super fast charge, it's gonna be more expensive than you put in a level 2 or level 1.
The level ones are the ones that people generally install in their own homes.
I think level 1, you pretty much just plug it into the wall outlet and charge it over 12 hours or whatever.
Yeah. As long as-
Yeah. And level 2 is a little bit quicker. It's like 4 hours for recharge or something, or 4 or 5 hours. These other two items under item 7, will just bring awareness to these reports that have nothing good to say about climate change and the NOAA report and sea level rise is going to happen quicker and be higher than what they were previously forecasting. And the IPCC report saying that, the world needs to get on the stick to start, cutting fossil fuels. And if we don't do it, then, there are consequences. Anybody else have anything?
What's the meeting on the 29th? 7?
I believe it's at 7, and I think it's at the high school.
It's at in the high school auditorium. And there's usually a few copies of the proposed budget by the doors when you walk in, or you can bring a tablet and log into the Stonington School internet.
Oh, one
Or
other thing,
download one and print it up yourself.
one other thing I sent out was the draft affordable housing plan. And the reason I sent it out because it was mentioned in our priority list. There's a public hearing on this at Planning Zoning on April 5th. The part that bothered me the most was on pages 16 and 17, where the author of this document pretty much says, ignore environmental, the sea level rise, and you know, the last sentence here, decision makers must resist the temptations of speculative considerations and projections of yet to be realized future conditions that color the merit of the application and reasonableness of the regulations in place at the moment in time. Like saying, well, sea level rise, well, it may happen, it may not happen, but let's build a affordable housing in water in the coastal zone. You can send written comments to the Department of Planning ahead of time. I sent comments in, and I'm going to try and go to the meeting as well. But you know, to me, one other thing I put in my comments was I think they're trying to do this out of sequence. They should do the zoning regulations first and then do an affordable housing plan, because whatever they put in this affordable housing plan is going to change based on what's in the regulations that they're going to update. But that's just my opinion. There is a state law that says that the affordable housing plans have to be done by June. But it doesn't really give a penalty for not turning it in. And then there's a couple of affordable housing laws that are being proposed that is going to change everything that they've already put in place. So it's kind of hard until the state decides what they're going to do to come up with a realistic affordable housing plan. But you can do with it what you like, as far as if you want to comment on it.
So this is something that, if I can make a comment,
Yeah.
that the state asked for over 10 years ago, and at that time it was optional, and the Planning and Zoning Commission at that time said, you were going to opt out, we're not going to do it. Now it's mandatory. So yeah, I don't know what consequences there are of not having it completed by the due date. But just like anything else, it's a moving target and a moving document. So right now, anything can be put in any zone because we are under the 10% maximum. There's only a few towns in the entire state that have more than 10%.
The zoning and environmental regulations generally, because of that situation, my understanding is that they get pretty much a pass on most of it.
Well, that's true in Stonington. That's how Stonington has always treated it. There was a letter to the editor or guest opinion on one of the online newspapers. I forget whether it was Connecticut Mirror or Connecticut Examiner, from Bill Sides. And he said, that's not true. I mean, if you have, concerns about certain things, you can, make the developer make adjustments to it. But Stonington doesn't want to deal with the legal issue, possible legal issues. So in my experience in Stonington, it's always just said, let them do what they want. I also suggested in my comments that they look and see whether you can get a moratorium from the regulations for 4 years, whether we qualify. North Stonington had CCOG do a analysis, and they didn't qualify, but they showed them where they were and how many more units they had to do to get it. But it seems to me that we've added quite a few affordable housing units in the past few years. But we, of course, we also have a lot more market rate structures going up, so we might qualify, we might not, but if we could qualify for that, it would be something to look at until we get everything that, decide where we want to put affordable housing.
I think we're only at 5.6% of
Yeah.
of units considered affordable housing right now.
But 10% is the,
We need 10, yeah.
Well, yeah, but you don't need 10 to get the exemption. You only need like 2%. You need to show progress. And I think the start date for the initial analysis was 1990. So any houses, any units that you added between 1990 and now goes into the calculation. And if you can show that you increased it by 2% during that period, then you can qualify for this exemption.
Okay,
And that's what CCOG did for North Stonington.
okay.
They put together this lengthy document that said, this is where you stand at. Whatever. Anybody else? Anything?
Yes, Rick,
Yep.
do I understand correctly from the last meeting that any two of us can talk to one another about items on the agenda or write to one another? And that's okay, because that doesn't constitute a meeting? I just want to make sure we're
I-
doing.
I sent inquiries on this and never got a reply. So I'm assuming that what I read into the Supreme Court document that ruling was that as long as you don't have a quorum of members and that you're not acting in an authority, you're not authorizing anything to be done on behalf of the committee, that you could meet as many times as you want without having a public meeting and taking notes and putting out an agenda. So if
Thank
like 2 or 3 people wanted to get together to work together on something, you can do that.
I think it gets tricky when you have permits that come before you.
Yeah.
You're gonna pick start date, but other than that, I think there you go. Your interpretation is what I understand.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
yep. Anybody in Cyberland have anything else?
No.
I want to say thank you to Lindsay and Rick for toughing it out at the Board of Finance meeting last Thursday night. It was almost midnight when the meeting ended. And you were right in the front row. So I just thank you for being there. The support was, was noted. So,
One reason I was toughing it out is because Danielle was supposed to give an update on the Cops Brook property. And they just blew over that at the end.
oh, okay. Oh,
I just really like budget meetings.
What's that?
I said I just really like budget meetings.
No, you didn't have a ride home.
We did come separately so that I
Oh.
could ditch if I needed to. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, great.
Thank you, Rick. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Nice, Susan.
Have a good one.
Sure. Make a motion. Second. I word adjourned.
Sure.